Hey, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Tech Tuesday on the Educational AD Podcast. We're going to be right back with this week's tech guests, but as always, we're going to give a shout out to our sponsors. Now, if you're new to the podcast, these are all great companies. They are time savers, they are money makers. You should add them to your team. So take 3 minutes, listen to our shout outs, then listen to our Tech Tuesday guest, and then go and visit these sponsors. I'm telling you, you're going to be glad you did. Here we go. We want to say thanks to our good friends at Sideline Interactive, indoor score tables and video boards. Go to sidelineinteractive.com. You can schedule a live web demo to see their products in action. Probably one of the best purchases I ever made was our Sideline Interactive indoor score table. Go to sidelineinteractive.com. Schedule that live web demo today. We also want to say thank you to Huddle. As a football coach, I used Huddle for years, but when I became an athletic director, I made sure that our school was a Huddle school. Our coaches, our student athletes, even our parents just love the tools that the Huddle platform provides. Go to huddle.com, join the 100 million users, and turn your school into a Huddle school. That's huddle.com. We also want to say thanks to Vital Signs, Wall of Fame, and Beacon Creative. Now, Wall of Fame has been helping schools bring their legacy to life for over a decade, but Beacon Creative brings it to a whole new level. Beacon is a content creation service, and they're going to take your stories, your narratives, your history, and come up with compelling narratives that you can then post on your school's social media site, maybe on a Wall of Fame board. You really got to see it to believe it. I want you to reach out to John Townsend, and you can do that at John, John, at beaconwalloffame.com. Beacon Creative and Vital Signs Wall of Fame. It's a winning team you should be a part of. We also want to thank Home Campus. Scheduling, rosters, results, communication, facility management. Home Campus does all of this and more, does it better and faster than the other platforms. Did I mention athletic eligibility and clearance? That one alone is a game changer. To get started, just go to homecampus.com. Let them show you all the great things they can do for you. That's homecampus.com. We also want to say thanks to our friends at Gipper. Gipper's the modern marketing platform that makes it easy for any athletic department to look their best. And you don't need to go out and hire an SID to do it. Gipper makes marketing easy for any athletic department. How easy? Well, it's so easy, even I can do it. Thousands of templates that you can custom tune to your colors, your brands, your logos. And again, it is incredibly easy. Create, share, and schedule all your social media content in one simple platform. It's digital newsletters, it's social media posts, it goes on and on. Go to Gipper.com for more information. And as always, let them know you heard about it on the Educational AD Podcast. Let's say thanks to Ohio University and their online masters in athletic administration. Now, I didn't get my master's through the Ohio program, but guess what? My assistant athletic director did, along with thousands of others. And it was an incredible experience where they also earned 11 NIAAA leadership training courses at no extra charge. Check out Ohio University and their online masters in athletic administration. We also want to thank Booster Hub, the #1 Booster Club software package. And your boosters are looking for ways to support you. How about a platform that handles everything? Sponsorship payments, meal fees, concession sales, it all goes through their secure system. Volunteer signups, volunteer changes. You know those changes are going to happen. Nothing falls through the cracks. Everybody stays engaged, and that gives your boosters more time to support you as fans. Give them the platform they want. Give them the platform they need. Go to boosterhub.com. We want to say thanks to Hometown. Hometown continues to be a leader with their solutions that include things like, well, big surprise, digital ticketing. They're still the #1 digital ticketing platform for schools and colleges. But how about fee-free fundraising, athletic website construction? Their list goes on and on. Whether you're a principal, an AD, even a coach, Hometown is going to show you how to save time, how to raise more money, and how to bring your community together. It's hometown.com. toolboxextra.com. Check them out today. And finally, we want to say thanks to Athletic Surveys. You know, at my school, we use surveys for everything: student athletes, coaches, even parents. And here's the cool thing: the information that would come back on these surveys, incredibly positive. I'm talking over the top positive. We still got to hear from our squeaky wheel parents, but the surveys allowed us to find out their concerns, usually address them before they turned into something big. But having all that positive data, incredibly valuable, especially when you're visiting with that frustrated parent, or maybe your principal, sometimes even your school board. Go to athleticsurveys.com. They're going to create a custom survey that lets you take the pulse of everybody in your program. Athletic Surveys, and don't forget to mention you heard about it on the Educational AD Podcast. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Tech Tuesday on the Educational AD Podcast. We're going all the way up to Wisconsin today, and our guest is Michael, but we're going to call him Mike Durnin. Mike is the director of Via Crucis Leadership. We're going to hear about that later in the show. Has an incredible background in leadership. He was a college dean of students. He was a college head football coach. I'm kind of liking that. But we're excited to have him on the program. Mike Durnin, welcome to the Educational AD Podcast.
Well, Jake, it is sincerely an honor and a pleasure to be here with you today on Educational AD Podcast. I love what you are doing, helping people who have a variety of leadership roles within athletics and education and just leadership in general. And I know from your history of this podcast, I mean, you've had folks on there from not only your state of Florida, but throughout the Midwest, the East Coast, the West Coast. And I think that is just fabulous because I know we all learn from others.
Well, gosh, you're very kind to say that. I do appreciate that. We think we do a pretty good job of sharing. Want to give a shout out right away to our mutual connection, Dr. Courtney Beck, who introduced us. She has her own podcast. You were a guest on that show. I was a guest a long time ago, but Courtney does a great job, and appreciate her connecting us. Let's go and jump into this conversation on Tech Tuesday. Mike, we always like to let our listeners have a chance to get to know our guests. So give us your quick bio, where you were born, where you grew up. Kind of take us up through your, let's say, your own undergraduate days, and then we're going to talk about your career later. But what's the Mike Durnin origin story?
Well, thanks for asking. It's somewhat unique. I was born and raised in Milwaukee, and I'm a product of many during that time span. The Catholic elementary schools, which is going to lead into the Via Crucis here in a little bit, and actually started out my high school career at Marquette High School in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, a Jesuit high school. And we were living there. And then my father was transferred, and we moved to southern Indiana, to Evansville, Indiana. And if folks remember the movie Remember the Titans.
Oh, yeah.
And so the high school I ended up going to had only been, in essence, desegregated for about a year and a half, 2 years before I moved in there. And it was a unique situation. So those fights that you saw in the movie in the hallway, I remember those. We had some similar situations in our high school. And so I had a great experience. I didn't know it at the time, but it was a lifelong experience. And I played for, when I was in Milwaukee, I had a Hall of Fame high school coach that I was playing for football. And then I ended up in another high school Hall of Fame football coach in Indiana. And I hope my dog is not interrupting a conversation because it's barking outside here. But the great part about that then is I actually came back to Wisconsin and went to college at University of Wisconsin La Crosse, where I had another Hall of Fame coach, Roger Herring. And so I played 4 years of football there, and I knew, even though my father really wanted me to be in business, I wanted to coach. I wanted to teach. And he supported me in terms of what I wanted to do, and that kind of started me on my journey. So, but I was very blessed, had two fabulous folks, parents. My mom is still alive at 93. She was a nurse, and my father was a businessman. But one of the things that I learned, not only from those two, but all the coaches I had along the way, and even though it was not an in vogue term, was the aspect of servant leadership, and that we are on this earth to serve others. And that has stuck with me throughout my career.
Well, again, I just love to hear the stories. Real quick, you talked about that Catholic school upbringing. Um, I think people who did not experience that, there might be some stereotypes and some misconceptions. What are some of your memories as a kid growing up in that Catholic education environment?
Well, I think, first and foremost, I think, you hear a lot of people talk about faith and how that is a core value. And by the upbringing I was in there, faith became a big part of my life. And, now I look at it and say, that allowed me, and I love 2 Corinthians 5:7, that says, walk by faith, not by sight. And what it really is saying, we need to look beyond whatever situation is presented in front of us to solutions, to look for a better way. And that has guided me throughout. And the other aspect is taking pause in our lives, which is something, I mean, I'm a recovering workaholic. And so to take pause is not easy, but I'm so thankful that that lesson was presented to me early in my life.
That's such an I'm going to talk about that. That's such an important lesson, I think, for coaches and ads, because the job, we have a fun job, but it can become consuming to the exclusion of other things that are more important. Home, family, kids, spouse, et cetera. And I speak to groups of ads and coaches frequently, and I mentioned that I've been fortunate enough in my career to be a member of a couple of halls of fame, and we should aspire to do that in our job. That's a worthy goal, but make sure along the way that you can that your kids or your spouse, that they would nominate you for the Parent Hall of Fame or the Partner Hall of Fame. I mean, and there were some times in my career, I don't know if that would have been the case. I think it is now, but what do you think about that?
I wholeheartedly agree. And one of the aspects that I talk to young people about right now, and I have the great honor right now, I'm teaching a course as an adjunct at Viterbo University. It's called Teaching and Coaching Leadership Class. And we talk about, there's two ends of the spectrum. Lead with the mind. Okay. So you're really in that technical, that's that high, and you're almost always looking at that external scoreboard, the scoreboard we all see in athletics. But then also lead with your heart, which goes into that internal scoreboard. And it's the values that we live by. And what we're looking for is getting to that intersection between leading with the mind, leading with the heart. And that intersection is where love and wisdom reside, where we become the best version of ourselves for the greater good. And so, we all struggle with that. When you've been raised, you've been an athlete, you've been a coach. We know that external scoreboard is always there, and we're judged on that external scoreboard. And I've been fortunate. I've had situations and years where that scoreboard was, more or less in my favor or the favor of our team. And I've also been on the other end of that, where it was not. And, had situations that came up because of that I had to go change direction, so to speak, which is politically correct way of saying, yes, I have been fired as a coach as well as had winning championships. And, but that's okay. But one of the things that jersey, that polo, that coaching cap that no matter if it's on or off is always there is that internal scoreboard. And I believe in the long run, that's what we are judged by. And that's what people remember.
Well, I love that whole visual, and I love earlier on how you talked about wisdom and love in the same area. You mentioned football. You're a very successful coach. You were an assistant coach, Wisconsin lacrosse, head football coach at Luther. Talk about those days. And again, you've already shared the servant leader, but share with our listeners that experience of being a college football coach.
Well, it's great. I was blessed. When I got done playing, I played football at Wisconsin lacrosse, and I was one of those undersized quarterbacks that was very fortunate to have a lot of great players around me and very successful. But in terms of the external scoreboard, both in high school and college, and I had an opportunity right away to end up being a college football coach, and went to Mankato State and learned. I was coaching people, young men that were basically the same age as I was at the time, and learned a lot in a hurry. Had a fabulous mentor right out of the gates, a gentleman named Dan Runkle, who spent his career at Mankato State, and then afterwards became an athletic director, and actually just passed away. We just had a celebration of an opportunity to, in essence, step into the arena of coaching. From there, I was on the West Coast. I was South Dakota for a couple of years, and I was in. We're at the age of, in essence, 25. I was a defensive coordinator for a small college football team, which I'm not sure why. And the gentleman who gave me that role is still a very, very close friend of mine, and became a defensive coordinator. And then I ended up at the University of Puget Sound out in Tacoma, Washington, for and coaching with a gentleman named Ross Jelsef, who is to me one of the most down to earth. When you talk about leading, the combination of the heart, or leading with the mind and leading with the heart, and love and wisdom, he was there. And fabulous experience being with him for 7 years. Ended up at Illinois State from there. So I ended up at that level where you're just going constantly. And that was it. Ended up coming back. I was actually out of coaching for a couple of years because my father had gone ill and I wanted to help out with some family situations. And I came back to Wisconsin lacrosse as a coach. And what an experience to be at my alma mater. I was teaching, I was coaching, I did some administrative work, and surrounded by great young men who, you know, you really establish relationships with, and then ended up being a head coach at Luther College. And we can get one of those stories, a story associated with Luther that is still near and dear to my heart, and experienced a lot of great things. It didn't work out from the scoreboard situation. We had some decent years there. We really did. And then at the end, it kind of didn't go that way, and it taught me some great lessons that I share with people in between, and in terms of making sure you don't lead too much with the heart. You still got to have the mind part and how to balance some of that. And then I ended up at the University of Dubuque as an assistant head coach, back with the same guy who hired me back in 1983, who we'd coached together in 81 and 82, but he became a head coach in South Dakota, hired me as a defense coordinator. We were back together again, in essence, to finish our careers. And then what really happened, Jake, which I really loved, and I didn't know I was going to love this. I had back in 2000, December of 2017, January 18, the president of the University of Dubuque calls me in his office. Now, this is a couple rungs ahead of me on the hierarchy of higher ed. Calls me in his office and says, "Mike, how would you like to do us a favor?" Now, Jake, you've been there with those administrators favor, and you basically are saying yes. And he goes, then he proceeds to say, I want you to be in charge of student life here. I said, Jeff, I've not done this before. I've been in athletics. I've taught people to be PE teachers. And he goes, I don't care. I know how you think. I know you believe in the mission. You're the person I want at this time. And it provided me an opportunity to finish my career with a role that I know I was still coaching, I was still teaching, but I was doing it in a different manner in terms of all of the aspects of, you know, the university. And I'm so thankful for that role because it taught me so much more and it provided me an opportunity to continue learning. And what was interesting is during that time, of course, now if you think about the years, I was in this role when COVID hit. At the same time COVID hit, I decided, in conjunction with folks that were at a seminary school associated with the University of Dubuque, I started a doctorate of ministry at the same time. So at the age of 60, I'm going back to school. And that provided me with a wealth of knowledge and a wealth of experiences as well to help on my journey. And through it all, what I still remember and I still communicate with people that I coached with back in the early 80s was what we really do in our lives is establish relationships with people. And the more focus we do on those relationships, I think the more fulfilled our lives become.
Oh, absolutely. I love everything you shared. Talking about our toolbox books, building relationships, it's one of the most frequently mentioned tools that an AD should have. The relationships with students, with coaches, with administrators, with parents, with stakeholders. Great stuff. Mike, we're going to talk about Via Crucis leadership soon, but looking at your role, and I think you were there for about 10 years as the director of student life. What are some things, what are some tools, if you will, that you can give our listeners that they could use in their servant leadership? What are some things that you either
Sure.
knew from previous stops or that you picked up along the way that you can share with our listeners?
Sure. I think first and foremost, as I've studied leadership and I can get into my doctorate, was actually regarding leadership development. But when I look at leaders, great leaders, and we study great leaders, I think one aspect that comes out first and foremost is their ability to stay calm no matter what the situation. And one of the tricks that was taught to me, so this is not Mike Durnin original, but was taught to me is the essence of we all know what a stoplight looks like. You got the red, yellow, green. And what I worked with, and I actually had this sign in my office, it was the actual stoplight that basically only I could see it. And so I knew before any meeting, before taking any phone call, I would look at that stoplight and I would pause and say, what kind of messaging, what kind of response will I give? Well, I need to stay calm. And I would think about I would look at then the yellow and say, okay, put the strategy together. And then I would go to green and go. And that imagery allowed me to walk. I mean, when I was in that role, I had to respond to, attempted suicides, arguments going on, a lot of difficult situations. It helped me be calm going into it. And I think that is the first tool we need to find. Now, I know Mel Robbins talks about counting backwards from five, five, four, three, two, one. And because you're going backwards, you pause more than you would counting forwards. That's her methodology of doing that. But every time I looked at and studied great leaders, that calmness was always there and be able to be there. And then the next tool is knowing that we're going to need others. None of us do leadership by themselves. Yes, you lead yourself, but you're going to need others to help you. Yes, you might lead others, but you're going to need others to help you. And when you empower others, you have a greater chance of success. And I believe those are the first two tools everybody needs. And then the next two deal with a mindset of no matter what, I'm going to keep these values in mind. I know this is the goal I'm looking for. I'm going to make sure I stay as close to this line as possible. I don't want to drift, because if I drift, I go away from my goals. And so I want to stay cognizant, no matter what am I looking for? And then the second part of the mindset is, and then be able to go and then some. It's that extra mile, that extra inch that can make the biggest difference. And so those are the main tools that I recommend that really helped me in that role. But it really, when I look back, when I followed that earlier in my life, I was more successful. And then the last part of it comes back to, all right, what do we really control in our lives? Our attitude and our effort. That's it. Everything else is a response to things going on. But what is our attitude? What is our effort? What does that look like? And all those are made visible by our words and our actions. So we're always on display. And as you well know, you spent time as an athletic director, you spent time as coach, you're visible. You live in a glass house. And the higher the level you are, the more glass that is surrounding you. And so understand everything we say and do is made visible. It is speaking towards our leadership, our values all the time.
Wow, great stuff. That was just a master class in about 5 minutes. Mike, we're going to do this at the end of the podcast, but let's do it now. If one of our listeners wants to reach out, pick your brain a little bit more, find out more, what's the best way that they can connect with Mike Durnin?
One of the easiest ways, if you go on LinkedIn, got a decent presence there. You can direct message me with that, or you can just simply email me at mikedurnin@viacrucisleadership.org. Or to be honest with you, and I'll share it right on your broadcast, you can call my cell phone. It's 563-379-0923. Please don't hesitate. My phone number's been out there for so many years of recruiting and administration. It's out there. It's not that hard to find. But again, feel free to call me, email me, or go on LinkedIn and send me a message, and I will definitely respond. I love it.
Well, let's go and talk about Via Crucis leadership. Share with our listeners, what is it? Where did it come from? And what are the resources that are available to coaches and ADs?
Sure. So, as I alluded to, when I was 6 years old, I started a doctorate. And when I was doing this doctorate ministry, my cohort were all ordained ministers. I was not. And so I needed to put a dissertation together. Well, I knew I loved leadership development. I've been studying and reading for decades, all kinds of books, watching podcasts or listening to podcasts, watching TED Talks on leadership, etc. So I knew that was a big part of me, but I needed to put something together that had a more of a ministry mindset. And it came to me, we alluded to this, Catholic upbringing is within the Catholic faith, and even in some other traditions as well. You have the Stations of the Cross, and which is basically Jesus's passion, the last 24 hours that Jesus is on this earth. And I believe in the Holy Spirit works in mystical ways, all of a sudden lying in bed one night, I started thinking about aspects like we just shared, staying calm, needing others, etc. And I was able to look and see this related to this station, this related to this other station. And I actually got out of bed, and in 20 minutes, I had written down 14 stations and 14 leadership concepts and matched them all together. Went into my advisor and said, what do you think if I did a project on this, did a study on this, put it together a manual related to this? And I got the thumbs up, and that's where, in essence, the term via crucis comes from, is way of the cross. And the reason I use that is because no matter what journey we go on, or as I like to say, whatever pilgrimage we go on, there's always going to be setbacks, there's always going to be challenges. We have a burden that we are carrying forward, especially when we take ownership of whatever endeavor we are doing. And so that's where this started from. And so what I try to do, and I do combination of keynote talks, work individually. Right now, I'm going to be working with a city group that includes police department in the state of Iowa later in April. Is I look to say, how do we go from knowing all these concepts to actually doing these concepts? And if when we do them long enough, we become them. We go from knowing to doing to being. And what I look to do is really build upon the foundation of leading ourselves and leading others. Because, and you know this from all your years of athletics, what do you do when things aren't going well? You get back to fundamentals. Even when you're doing well, you have to, sometimes it's like, oh, wait, we better make sure we don't lose the fundamentals. Well, to me, this foundation is critical for us to go forward. And that foundation, I relate it to the old nursery rhyme, Three Little Pigs, and the Big Bad Wolf. The one pig builds a house out of straw, one out of sticks, and then all of a sudden one builds it out of bricks. Well, the big bad wolf is always there. That's the setbacks. That's the challenges we face each and every day in our lives. Sometimes they're big, sometimes a little bit smaller, but they're always there. And we're best able to take those on when we have a great foundation, the house of bricks. And not only does that pig be able to take on Big Bad Wolf, but invites the other pigs back into his house that has the better foundation. So that pig is serving the others along with continuing to build that foundation for going forward. And so, and then for me, that my foundation is a handful of L's. So to build that foundation, remember, I'm an old coach, so I try to keep things simple. That foundation, those handful of L's, that's continue to learn, continue to laugh, continue to listen, continue to live, and continue to love. You'll learn through books, podcasts, TED Talks, conversations with others, which is critical. You continue to laugh because we know from a health benefit, you need to continue to fill your own reservoir. You need to continue to fill your own cup so you're better able to serve others. And laughter provides you, and it works with the parasympathetic nervous system, allows you to be calmer, allows you to handle more situations. You continue to listen, and I talk about listening like a sponge because you want to soak in everything that is around you. And you listen not only with your ears, but listen with your eyes. You need a great awareness of what's going on. Continue to live. Well, you got to be in an arena. You can't sit on the sidelines in life. And no one is ever successful living on the sidelines. It doesn't. And it's the same with, I tell people when I talk to young athletes, even when you're on the bench during a game, you're actually in the arena because you have already practiced. You've already been in the weight room. So you are in the arena, you are living, and then you continue to love. And that comes back to the adage, and I love this quote, I've used it for years. People don't care what you know until they know that you care. And I know you've heard that one before in your life, but to me, it's one that we need to continue to bring out there because caring for others is critical. It's that unconditional love that we provide for others. And so that's the foundation. That's where this all comes from. And that's where I try to help people get to so that, yes, there's that external scoreboard, but there's also an internal scoreboard. And how do you be successful? How do you navigate with both of those? Oh, by the way, Jake, there is a bonus L. And the bonus L is this. When you do all those 5 L's, pretty well guarantee you're going to leave a legacy. And it's not necessarily the legacy others leave or you leave with others, but it's the legacy others leave within you. And you know as well as I do, the the legacy others, the athletes we have worked with, the coaches we have worked with in our lives, those stories remain in our hearts forever.
Oh no, you're so right. Well, I guess we can go and end on that. I'm a couple years older than you, and going back to those reunions. I just had my 50th high school reunion last summer. Every year that we go back, we still talk about, we don't talk about math class. We don't talk about that equation. We talk about, hey, you remember that time of practice? Hey, you remember that bus ride? You remember that game? And some games we won, some games we didn't. But it's those relationships that have truly become, lifelong relationships. The legacy that you're talking about. Great, great stuff.
Yeah.
Mike, one more time. Let's go and give out that contact information. Again, your group is via Crucis Leadership. It's on LinkedIn, but what's the contact information?
Sure. So my email address is Mike Durnin at viacrucisleadership.org. My phone number is 563-379-0923. And like I said, if you just go search for Mike Durnin and you can put the initials at the end, DMIN, which is Doctor of Ministry, because I'm the only one on LinkedIn with my name. You'll find me and you can connect, and I will love being in a conversation with you.
Well, Dr. Mike Durnin, we appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to share with our listeners all the best moving forward. And we're definitely going to have you come back for another segment.
I really appreciated our conversation today, and I look forward to some more conversations. I really love, like I said, what you are doing with Educational AD podcasts and helping, leaders of young people throughout the country. I think that is marvelous.
Oh, well, right back at you. Thank you for those kind words. We appreciate our listeners, too. And just a reminder that we upload the Zoom recordings of every interview to the Educational AD Podcast YouTube channel. We do Tech Tuesday just about every week, and just about every day we try to share stories and best practices from the world of athletics. So please come back and join us again on the next episode of the Educational AD Podcast. We'll see you next time. Well, what a great resource. Make sure you check out Mike Durnin via Crucis Leadership. Also, please make sure you check out our sponsors. They will really add value to whatever you do as a leader. They're time savers, they're money makers, they are great, great people to have on your team. Let's say thanks to Hometown. You'll find them at hometown.com. Sideline Interactive, indoor score tables and video boards. Find them at sidelineinteractive.com. Athletic surveys. If you're not using a survey to take the pulse of your school, you're really missing out. Check out athleticsurveys.com. Booster Hub, it's the #1 Booster Club software package. Go to boosterhub.com. Huddle, I used it as a football coach. I used it as an AD. We were a Huddle school. Go to huddle.com. Ohio University and their online masters in athletic administration. Check out Ohio University. Gipper, Turn your school social media department into a D1 pro looking experience. Go to Gipper.com to find out more. Home campus for scheduling, for rosters, for results, for athletic eligibility and clearance. Check out homecampus.com. And Beacon Creative and Vital Signs Wall of Fame. Check out Beacon Creative and all the things they can do for your program. Thanks again for listening to this episode of Tech Tuesday. We'll see you next time on the Educational ED Podcast. Thanks again.